Hey y'all, Robbie Falk here. Talkin Dawgs is live on your YouTube, whether you're a getting this on your tablet, phone, TV, whatever. I appreciate it. Thanks for checking in with me. Just wanted to kind of stop in tonight and discuss where things are in Mississippi State with the transfer portal and who they've lost, who they've gained, all that jazz. So hopefully you guys will stick along for the ride tonight. And if you're watching this on replay, thank you for that as well. I want to remind you guys to subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, the Maroon and White Daily YouTube channel. We moved over here several months ago, started this YouTube page, and has had a good bit of success over the last few months. And that's thanks to you guys for stopping in, especially on these Talkin Dawgs lives that we have, these little chats. I like to have this so I can interact with you guys, answer some questions, things like that. Sometimes we share some premium stuff on here. So it's always a good opportunity for you guys to learn some things if you're not a subscriber to our website. And if you are, thank you. Tremendous thank you for that, for being a subscriber to Maroon and White Daily. If you aren't and you want to be, come check us out. We have the latest on transfer portal news. We have the latest in recruiting, team news, all that stuff. And of course, a very vibrant message board, one of the top message boards on the On3 network. And that's all because of the Mississippi State fans. It's a place where, I mean, you are kidding. These people are so obsessed with Mississippi State and college sports, our members, that you're getting information as it's coming out a lot of times. Those guys are following it closer than Paul and I sometimes. We have our hands full. Big shout out to a lot of these folks that are so passionate about college sports in Mississippi State that they're updating a lot of that stuff on the board before we can even get there. So if you want to stay up to date on that stuff, the only place you can do that and have a place where it's just collected in one spot is Maroon and White Daily. So come check us out. We'd love to have you. A growing site that we are almost 1 year in as a duo, Paul Jones and myself, back together. We got back together on January 1st. We were almost 1 year to that point, and we have had so much growth. We are so proud of where we are. More members in about a year and couple of months because Paul joined On3, started the site in I think October. So during that time, we have already gotten more members during that point on this website than we did in our first 6 years at Bulldogs 247. That's just how much the site's grown, and we are so proud of the work that we've put in and of the people that have followed us over there to On3. So thank you. All right, so let's just kind of dive into this. And I'm going to pull up. I'm keeping tabs on this online. And even if you're not a member, again, would love for you to join. But if you're not a member, we have a running article on our front page that I'm keeping updated as things happen. It is our Mississippi State football transfer portal tracker. You can see it. If you go to On3 right now as we speak, you can follow along with what I'm looking at here. And I've got all of Mississippi State scholarship players that have entered the portal. I want to go ahead and say that I did not include guys like Eric Taylor and Jeffrey Pittman and I think Leon Bell on the list. I know some people have, but when those guys were announced as no longer with the team, they are no longer with the team for me. I'm no longer including them on the scholarship players because these are the players that we already knew had left. So that's just the way I do things. You might disagree, I don't know, but they're not on this list. But this list is fairly large at this point, and the majority of these players are players that we expected to move on. Guys that aren't a big surprise. But there were some players that entered that Mississippi State did not want to lose. Cornerback Bryce Pollock, probably one of the top guys on the defense this past year. He was one of the first guys to enter the portal, or at least announce that he was entering. And that was a tough loss for Mississippi State, especially at a position like cornerback that is really important for them next year, and a defense that you're trying to build back up. And, to this point, and, I know the comments are going to come, but he's really the only guy on the defense that you've lost that is a loss. and there's only a handful of guys there that you really wanted to keep. He's one of them. But for the most part, the defense is kind of intact with the guys that you want. And we've got the news this week. It looks like Stonka Burnside is going to move to the defensive side of the ball, which is something that we've been telling our members about now for a couple of months. That was probably in the works. So, it looks like State's defense is now in building mode and not complete rebuilding mode. There are some good pieces there that you like. Obviously, there's a lot of room for growth, but when you look at it and you look at the potential of some players and the work that Isaac Smith put in and Stone Blanton and guys like that, I think that at this point it's just about adding pieces to that and around it to make it a better group. But Bryce Pollock enters the portal. He announced this week that he's going to go join Darcel McBath, his former cornerbacks coach, who is at Texas Tech. So he's going to go Texas Tech. Not a real big shocker there, just because of the connection with Darcel McBath. But to me, kind of going from the SEC to the Big 12, a little bit of a head scratcher. But I think he just kind of wanted a new start there. And then moving over to last week, State took a huge hit on the offensive side of the ball, just from players that had experience and players that you were kind of excited about if you're a State fan from what you saw this year. And a couple of those guys, younger guys, Michael Van Buren, which, again, another thing that we reported earlier on the week, that Michael Van Buren was going to enter the transfer portal. And some of that was a connection to Mississippi State's recruitment of a quarterback out of the transfer portal. We initially reported it was because of Jackson Arnold, and Jackson Arnold had become Mississippi State's, QB1 they were after in the portal. The initial intel that we got was Arnold was had Mississippi State at the top of his list. It was pointing towards Mississippi State landing Arnold, and he was set up for a visit. Auburn comes in. They really make things difficult for the Bulldogs. They get the first visit, and they lock him down, and that changes things for State. And that was a tough miss for Mississippi State in the portal to not get Jackson Arnold, and we'll dive into that quarterback situation. Michael Van Buren, a lot of things went into that for Van Buren entering. I think just the fact that Mississippi State was 2-10, part of it. Had a high asking price, too, for Mississippi State, well over 7 figures. And, I think it kind of got to the point where it was kind of mutual between the two that they were just going to move in different directions. And it was tough because Van Buren showed some flashes this year for a true freshman to come in the league, go to the places that he went to at Texas, Georgia, Tennessee, Ole Miss. And for the most part, at least in 3 of those games, performed fairly well. It was tough to see that. But you also had Mario Craver enter, another guy that we told fans was going to enter the transfer portal. He entered, I think, a day before Michael Van Buren, and really exciting young receiver. But, that's another one that I think was kind of a mutual parting of ways there. And I think Mississippi State would have liked to have worked that one out. Craver was intent on leaving, from what I understand, and Mississippi State didn't exactly, fight extremely hard to keep him on board. But another big miss there. And the guy that they really did not want to lose was Kevin Coleman, who I think you can kind of read between the lines what happened with Kevin Coleman. A couple of days after he enters the portal, he's at Missouri, his home state school. That's the Missouri Tigers land Kevin Coleman. Mississippi State, I'm told, did what they had to do to try to keep him, and he was just ready to go. This is 4 schools in 4 years, too, for Kevin Coleman. He likes to travel at this point. Jackson State, Louisville, Mississippi State, and he's going to finish his career now with Missouri. That one was the biggest loss to me, because Kevin Coleman was a guy that you can kind of build around. You can lose a guy like Mario Craver. There's certainly some things that we were hearing during the middle of the season, even before the year. He got arrested. Got in trouble again in the middle of the season a couple of times. The second time was a suspension for a game, and there's a lot of headaches there, and it's still a young guy too. So there's some maturing that has to happen. But he has had a tremendous amount of interest out of the portal. Alabama, A&M, I think LSU has been interested in him. So he's got a list of suitors, and we'll see where he lands. But Mario Craver certainly a big loss. But for Mississippi State, to me, Kevin Coleman was the biggest loss for them. A senior, nearly 1,000-yard receiver for Mississippi State last year. I think he'll have a big season at Missouri. That's a tough loss for State. So that's they basically lost four guys at this point that they really did not want to lose: Bryce Pollock, Mario Craver, Michael Van Buren, and Kevin Coleman. And with the quarterback situation, it looks like the future, from what we can tell, at least from Jeff Lebby's perspective, is Kamario Taylor, the true freshman quarterback. That's the guy that he really believes is going to be Mississippi State's future at the quarterback position. And for next season, Lebby is all in on Blake Shapen. He believes that Blake Shapen can carry this team next year. And the question is, can he stay healthy? If he's healthy, he could be a guy that really has a big season. But that is the big question. So now moving to the, what else does Mississippi State do at quarterback? Because they have to land another quarterback out of the portal. And everything has shifted to Luke Kromenhoek, I think is how you say his name, the quarterback from Florida State. Played this year as a true freshman, was one of the top quarterbacks in the country coming out of high school. Showed some flashes this year. The numbers weren't great, but that was a Florida State team like Mississippi State that was just really struggling this year. And for Kromenhoek, he comes into the portal and is actually one of the highest rated players in the transfer portal, position and overall. He is a guy that a lot of people that have followed him in recruiting, scouts, evaluators, they believe that the ceiling is extremely high for this kid. And I've been told that, once things got really muddy with Jackson Arnold, this staff was all in on Kromenhoek. They brought him in for an official visit this weekend. He left on Monday. And, we have an update on the site right now. We don't have a story with him yet. We're kind of holding a story just in case something happens. We're going to hold that for the next, few hours or so, and then we might come back and do something if it looks like it's going to, play out a little bit longer. But the latest vibe we get on this, and we are very, very cautious on this after what happened with Arnold, when it felt like Mississippi State was moving in on him and it looked like something was imminent, because that's the word I was given from a source at Mississippi State, was things were really imminent with Jackson Arnold, and I think Auburn really muddied those waters. You never know what's going to happen in this. But as we speak right now at 6:15, Mississippi State is in really good position here. And I say that again cautiously because of what happened with Arnold. But all sources believe that State has done its job here, and it's just a formality. Again, we will follow the story and wait for official word, and we are not counting any eggs before they hatch, because it's a very delicate situation. Mississippi State needs to land a good quarterback here to go into that room. But if that is the case, if they do land Kromenhoek, I think that you've landed a very high ceiling player, and you've got two really high ceiling players now on this roster at that position, and Kamario Taylor, who has the potential to be a 5-star in this class when we finally finish it out at on 3. Top 35 player in the country. And then another guy that's a high 4-star, 5-star caliber player in Kromenhoek. So it's one of the most talented quarterback rooms that Mississippi State has ever had if it comes to fruition. But you got to finish it out here. And we will certainly be following that in the coming days. Hopefully that's something that wraps up quickly, because there's just a ton of anxiety within this fan base. And then, we've seen other commitments that we've reported on. Javen Williams was the first one to come through from Kennesaw State, defensive back that's going to compete at cornerback. Jamil Burrows from Miami and Alabama set out this past season. Mississippi State bring him in kind of in a tryout type basis in the spring, and we'll see what happens with him. A guy I really like at safety, Jerron Manning from Old Dominion, had a really good season. Highly rated guy as far as what he did in coverage. at his position at Old Dominion. I believe really adds some significant depth at safety room, and that safety room all of a sudden looking very talented. Um, Easily to me the biggest strength of the defense from a talent perspective with Isaac Smith, Stonka Burnside, Jerron Manning, and then Tony Mitchell that you added from JUCO, former Alabama safety. All those guys are going to have the ability to do some big things for you. State also picked up defensive end Red Hibbler from NC State, a former Louisville player that last year actually had 6.5 sacks. This year set out. I think he was in the doghouse a little bit at NC State. He's got a chance to have a fresh start. Has some potential to be a really good pass rusher for you if you're Mississippi State. I think that's a good add at defensive line. Nevaeh Sanders from Northern Illinois, an edge rusher who is another guy that I think is this is kind of like a situation where he comes in and tries to earn a spot. But a guy that has had a crazy journey during his college career. You know, he was going to NAIA school as a wide receiver, ends up walking on and earning a scholarship at Northern Illinois. And now he's getting an opportunity to play in the SEC. So good for that kid. Hopefully he can help Mississippi State as a pass rusher. At wide receiver, you picked up a former Oklahoma and Texas receiver in Brennan Thompson, a guy that Jeff Lebby knows, had a good season a couple years ago. And I think from a speed perspective, I think this is a guy that could come in and hopefully replace what Mario Craver added and maybe even add on to it. He's got that kind of speed and burner potential. And in Jeff Lebby's offense, I think those numbers from last year could look a lot different. And a bigger receiver you added for Michigan State, Jerron Glover, another guy that I think the numbers could look a lot different. This is a different situation for him. He's had a chance to put up much bigger numbers in this offense. And then today, you got a commitment from Jesse Rammel from James Madison, who has a chance to come in and compete at a tackle spot as a starter. So I think that was a good addition for them at an offensive line that needs depth and needs some challenges at those positions. Now they're looking for a center up front, but coming along in some of these positions, but still a lot of work to do. They need a cornerback for sure, and they're still going after those guys. I don't even know what they're doing at defensive tackle. I've kind of given up on trying to figure that out. There's virtually no one that I've seen to this point that they've really put a bid in on. So that's a big spot that's got to be filled. Maybe another couple of guys on the defensive line. Offensive line needs some more players. I feel like you need another running back, and they might go JUCO route there. We'll see what happens. And you probably need another wide receiver. So there's still several positions. I think they're going to go over the 15-player mark that Jeff Lebby was talking about. I think this is going to be a class that's closer to 20 players out of the transfer portal. So a lot of work still to be done, but they have added some good pieces, I think, on this roster to this point. There's just more work to do, and you really need to lock down Crum and Hawk here pretty soon. Make sure he doesn't take any more visits, get that deal done, and go from there. But there's still work to be done for this recruiting staff, no doubt about it. All right, so with that said, we're going to go ahead. We're going to get into the questions, the comments, all that stuff. We have a lot more people in here than we usually have. So if you are new to this, then I'm sure it's pretty self-explanatory at this point, but get your questions in at the chat box over on the right-hand side, and I will answer them. And of course, I want you guys to get your comments in too. If you have just some regular comments, we'll talk about those as well. All right. So let's start off with Ethan. Are we going to have to wait until midnight to see if Luke Dutch name will commit? Yeah, I hope not. I hope this thing gets over while we're talking about this. That'd be great to go ahead and just get that thing done. We don't need any more freakouts over that situation. JTG, where are we with all the defensive guys on their visits? It's just so many, man. Like I don't know. I mean, there's definitely some guys that we're watching that I think could happen anytime. Jalen Smith is one of those guys from Tennessee that Mississippi State was the only visit that he's set up to this point. He just visited. I haven't seen any other visits that he's taken. I don't know what's going on with him. I don't know if he's waiting for more visits, if he's waiting to commit, but that's one that I'm definitely watching out for. Um, and then I think there's some guys that they'll bring in. It fluctuates so much. It's just hard to know. They're still watching Travion Barnes, who's uh, the Conference USA Defensive Player of the Year last year. They're in decent spot with him. I think they're competing with Baylor as well. But the best thing I can say is you need to be locked in over at Maroon and White Daily, because we got a thread that is now. Let me go see how long that thing is. Um, this thread is at 407,000 views and over 7,000 posts on it at this point, and it's constantly being updated with guys that are entering the portal, guys that are taking visits, who's off the list for Mississippi State. I give a major hat tip to guys like Dog Season and Peanut and our guys that are really locked in on this, that help us out with that. And it's even a thread that I follow to kind of keep tabs on some stuff. So I would encourage you to come join our website and go check that thread out and live on that thing, if you're wanting to really keep tabs on it. And also, Paul Jones every single morning has a set of biscuits with updates, and he's updating visits as they're happening, things like that. I mean, it's the place to be if you want to be locked in on the transfer portal. Brooks Roberts, how you doing, sir? Hunter Johnson, I don't know if it means anything, but you have someone like Satania following State X account recently, and Joseph Williams pretty much following everyone on the staff. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's a telltale sign, but a lot of times it does tell a little bit of the story. So we'll see if that's the case. Satania would be a huge. I mean, either one of those guys would be huge. Joseph Williams or Satania, who played in this league and has had a lot of success in this league. I think Satania's taken a couple of more visits, so that's always concerning when you don't get them locked down. But one thing that I'll say is I think this has definitely changed, this year, where you're seeing more guys that want to take several visits. You're still seeing teams that are locking guys down the first visit, and some of these guys are locked up before they even get in the portal. So that's another thing to consider. But for the most part, I would say there's a much higher percentage of players that are taking more than one visits and don't have um, any desire to just go to one and be done. Switchblade 13, relative to the rest of the SEC, how much does our location have a negative impact on recruits? We've never had an influx of talent outside of a few years. I mean, it might some, but especially in the transfer portal, I think a lot of guys are just going somewhere that's going to get them to the league, who's going to pay them the most money, stuff like that. I just don't think it's as big a factor in this era as it used to be. But it does, to an extent. Not Starkville's not for everybody, but it actually plays into State's favor sometimes too. I mean, I think there's a lot of kids that have chosen Mississippi State because of the fact that it's a true college town where everyone is pulling in the same direction, for Mississippi State. Not literally everyone, but a larger percentage is doing it than in a lot of places, like a big city. Everything revolves around Mississippi State University. That means a lot to a lot of players. So it might affect it a bit. Jesse Brewer, I think the FSU quarterback is a better long-term option than Arnold. We need more money for offensive linemen, defensive linemen, and DBs. Yeah, could be. We'll see what happens. It's going to play out one way or the other for both Jackson Arnold and Hawk. So we'll see how it plays out. And those are two different guys. I mean, Hawk is much different stature than Jackson Arnold, different style. And then you have the fact that Arnold is now going into year 3, and this is year 2 for the FSU quarterback. So Ethan Stevenson, how likely is the firing of David Turner? I don't know. I've heard there's been some talk that this is going to be, his last month at Mississippi State. I find it hard to believe that they would allow David Turner to keep recruiting at this point if he's not going to be here next month. That decision would baffle me if that's the case. If David Turner knew that he was going to be gone in January and he still recruited for the last month, would be a really strange thought process. So, we'll see. I mean, as of right now, the tea leaves are Mississippi State's going to have the same staff, but there's obviously, it's never ending cycle. These coaching changes. James Booth, I guess one positive spin on what we have gotten out of the portal so far for the lines of scrimmage, we are getting some bigger bodies. Yeah, they're definitely trying to get some bigger dudes on this line, I think on both sides. That's been a point of emphasis. If you look at the guys they're going after, most of them are, guys that are bigger than some of the guys they have on the line right now. Law Dog, do you think we can get 20 good players of need in the portal? Remains to be seen, man. Like they got a short time to get there and a long way to go, as the song says. Low C, if a player commits or signs, can they retract it and sign somewhere else? Yeah, it's pretty much, not binding at all. I think they have a financial aid agreement, but those things are very easy to get out of. Um, really what it comes down to is when they enroll, it becomes much easier to hold on to these players. It's tough, once you enroll, because you start. But I think there's another portal um, period opening up too. So I mean, after the spring, another portal opens up. Nick Graham, what happened with Seth Davis last season? And Montre Miller. Well, Seth Davis was he had a brutal knee injury in the Egg Bowl on a screen pass, if you remember correctly, and it put him out for the entire year. And he's still rehabbing it. I mean, it was I'm talking total knee blowout. So it's been a very difficult thing to come back from, and it remains to be seen, how effective he's going to be this year. But hopefully, you get him close to where he was when he got to Mississippi State, because the talent there is undeniable, and what he could do in this offense is special. So hopefully, he can get back. Montre Miller, I don't know. I mean, he dealt with an injury. We saw him dressed out at times. Didn't play. I have no clue what's going on with him. Remy Ballhard. How many receivers do we take in the portal? We've lost 7 wide receivers to the portal, and 1 graduated. I think they probably take 3 more, if I had to guess. Quentin Lindsay, is there anything to be excited about with the 2 wide receivers that are transferring in? I don't know what's going to happen with Glover. I don't know how. I didn't think he had great quarterback play or great offense at Michigan State. So, you look at what Kevin Coleman did at Louisville the year before and what he did this year, and that kind of gives me hope on guys that don't necessarily have eye-popping stats. And it doesn't always translate one way or the other. Kelly Akari had 1,000 yards at UTEP and just wasn't a huge factor for Mississippi State. Kevin Coleman had, I think, 250, 300, whatever it was at Louisville, and he has almost 1,000 at Mississippi State. I think Brennan Thompson is going to be a guy that can explode in this offense. You can use him for a lot of different things in the slot. And this is an offense that can lend itself to big numbers for wide receivers. And I mean, big jumps from where they were at their previous stop. I count a lot of the, lack of production, I guess you could say. And, it wasn't just terrible at Oklahoma. I'm going to pull his stats up real quick. As a sophomore at Oklahoma, in which he transferred over from Texas, very limited time, but 7 catches for 241 yards. He was a Mario Craver type impact, 34 yards a catch, 2 touchdowns. So he's playing behind some players, but when he got his opportunities, he was explosive. This year, their offense was a lot different than what it was when Lebby was there, and his reps grew a lot. But 19 catches for 230 yards, still 12 yards a catch, still a big play threat, and had some big plays. But just, it wasn't the same. And just looking at his games, he had 4 catches was his most in a single game. Had a big 54-yard reception against South Carolina. Had a 33-yard reception against Houston. Those were his big plays, but the offense just not the same. So I'm really intrigued by this kid. I think he has a chance to do some special things for State. He's got things that you can't teach, like the speed. Legitimate 4.39 guy. So this offense can do a lot of things with guys with speed. Row, what happened to Anisha Carrier, that forward from the coast? I don't know what her status is, but she was suspended along with Destiny McFall and Taryn Ward. Both McFall and Ward returned for the Tupelo game. I don't know what the latest is on Carrier. I was not given an update. I was given an update prior to the game the other day that Ward and McFall would be back, and they were. Both of them played. McFall obviously, won the ball game for State with free throws. So I don't know. Don't know what's going on there. Hail State fans, soccer, softball, and both hoops teams are doing well in recruiting. Wish we could sprinkle some of that magic on the football program. Yeah, there's some kind of disconnect there with football. You've had some success with some of these other programs, and recruiting to Starkville and all that NIL and all that stuff, obviously an issue with them. So it's a football thing. Christopher Clifton kind of on that point there. Why is it that the most important sport in athletics is the absolute worst shape of our entire athletic department? Yeah, we were unlucky with Leach, but that's not an excuse to be this bad. I can't tell you. I really don't know what. I think there's a lot of factors that go into it. I don't think that State had, and I think they're kind of moving into this direction and getting better here, but I don't think that State had done what they needed to do to put the emphasis on football, whether it be NIL, and I think that was a big issue early on, that they just did not put the emphasis they needed to put on football with NIL. They weren't ahead of the game. They're very late in it. Thank God for Charlie Winfield for just deciding he wasn't going to sit back and watch it, crumble. But we've talked about it. What's up with the game day atmosphere? Why is Mississippi State's stadium in the shape that it's in? These are things that Mississippi State is woefully behind in. And they've got to improve this stuff to show that they care about football, in my opinion. I've had this conversation with people at Mississippi State that disagree with me on this stuff. But they're talking about investing in NIL. Well, Mississippi State fans are investing in the NIL, the revenue share, all that stuff. I get it. But state fans are coming out and investing in NIL. And obviously, you got to put your money in from revenue sharing. But if you want to keep these fans happy and you want to continue to push Mississippi State forward in the transfer portal and with this fan base, you've got to make the game day experience something that people want to come to. And I disagree with people that act like it's not important to fix that stuff first. I think you can do both. I think that you can invest in NIL and you can fix the things that are troublesome with your football game day atmosphere. So that I think is the biggest thing is Mississippi State just has not gone all in on football, and I think they're getting there. I think that they certainly moved in the right direction from an NIL perspective, and the administration is putting what they need to into the program as far as making staff moves and support roles, things like that. But there's got to be more, and Mississippi State's going to have to make up a ton of ground to truly compete in this era. So that to me is the biggest thing. Stringer Films were so screwed. We should have tried for Belichick while we had the chance. I'm not convinced that's going to work, but we'll watch it play out. Nick Graham, do you think we'll be okay on running backs? Don't know yet. I mean, I don't know what their plan is there. They're recruiting a JUCO running back, and I think they've Kevon Lee's out the door, Davon Booth's out the door. You need at least one more guy. You don't know what Seth Davis is going to do, how he's going to rehab. Xavier Gayton is certainly talented, but very little experience. You're bringing in two running backs that I think have an opportunity to be really good, but who knows? So, I don't know what the plan is. Darnell Day, do you think branding plays a role in our recruiting woes? If so, what do you think MSU has to do to prove our marketing? I don't think so. I mean, like the point was made earlier, they're not having trouble in any other sport really to recruit. They've been able to recruit top 25 classes in softball, baseball, basketball. Both basketball teams had, some of their best signing classes ever this year. So, I just don't know if the branding's a problem. Sims House 777. Thank you for not doing 666. Are there any state players that have entered the portal that could possibly stay at state? Haven't heard of any. Last year we were hearing rumblings on several guys. Corey Ellington ended up coming back. They had a chance to get Percy Lewis back, but I just haven't heard any. You've already lost 3 of the 4 guys that I mentioned earlier that were guys that you would love to keep, and they've already gone somewhere else. Mario Craver's the other guy, and I don't anticipate him returning. And I just don't, looking at the other guys, I just don't see a situation where they return. So not on the surface right now. Stringer Films, do you think John Cohen should be allowed within 5 miles of Starkville? I don't think he's ever going to be welcome back here, even more so than Scott Strickland. I mean, this fan base just absolutely despises John Cohen at this point. So it's probably best that everybody moves their separate ways. Adrian Brown, how's it going? I know the fan base can have the poor old state mentality at times, but how much of our struggles in recruiting can actually be attributed to that perception? I think to a point, especially early on in this NIL situation where people were just talking about how state was not going to be able to compete in this era. And instead of just, deciding they were going to go all in on it, I think a lot of fans just didn't want to know part of it. And that put Mississippi State at a disadvantage for a while. And I think that's changed a little bit, but there's still some reluctance. But yeah, I mean, it doesn't help. And I mean, people see that stuff, kids see that stuff. State has got to look at itself as something in some place that can do big things. And I think that's been an issue for Mississippi State people over the years is that people just like have been settling with, the bare minimum. And there are teams, especially in this era, that have decided we can do whatever we want to do. And whether that's true or not, that's the mentality you have to win in this sport. You have to have the mentality that we can do whatever we want to do. We can go get whoever we want to get. And that goes from the top down at Mississippi State. That's a ideal that's got to grow. Big Mix, good evening. Hope all is well. Two-parter. First, are you hearing anything on Donterry Russell's status? And second, and more importantly, where can I get the best steak in the Golden Triangle? I'll start with number two, and Anthony's is very, very high on that list. Anthony's in West Point, but I had the steak the other night at Restaurant Tyler, and it is phenomenal as well. Um, Cannot go wrong there. A very underrated place if you're in the area is and I know people get upset about the Golden Triangle area and what is actually the Golden Triangle area. Um, I branch out the Golden Triangle area more than most, but I think this little area of North Mississippi, anything within 30 miles or so of Starkville, I kind of sometimes refer to as that, and I know I'm wrong, but if you're in the area, right down the street from me, or right down the road, about 10 minutes away in Ackerman, Sonny's Smokehouse in Ackerman. You're going to pay for it, but the steak is really good, and it's obviously it's smoked, and it's a different kind of flavor than what you're going to get at some of these other restaurants. And the best steak sandwich I've ever had, right there in Ackerman, right off of Highway 15. But I think Anthony's is probably my answer. If you're going for a nice sit down restaurant, for a really good meal, you want to treat your wife or your significant other out, Anthony's is where I would go, or Restaurant Tyler. Either one of those, you cannot go wrong. I promise you. And on Donterry Russell, a little surprised he hadn't entered the portal, but at this point, it's looking like he might return, and hopefully you can get that guy, on the straight and narrow. He's a good teammate. He's doing everything he needs to do because the pass rushing ability, the ability to bend, the ability to get around an offensive tackle, get in the backfield to make a play is undeniable. And he's a player that would have helped you this year in that regard. That would be a big lift for Mississippi State if they could get that. Very thin. So, he's not the biggest guy, but he is a pass rushing specialist, something that you haven't had. And just adding that to the table, it's not a bad thing by any means. So that would be nice. Stringer Films was Michael Van Buren planning on leaving no matter what happened. I feel like he was going to leave no matter what. I don't think it was a situation where State was had to spend a certain amount of money or what. I felt like this was probably going to happen, at least for over the last couple of weeks. Hell State fan. I hope Shapen stays healthy. I wonder if Cromanhawk can fare well against SEC defenses. Yeah, he's. I think he'll be okay. Probably need to put on a little more weight, maybe. But he's definitely a guy that can take a hit. He ran the football fairly well this year. Who would I compare him to? One of the guys that I've seen thrown around is Ryan Tannehill that was at Texas A&M. Not a terrible comparison, I don't think, but certainly a guy that you haven't had. He's got that long winding release. He almost looks like a baseball player to me, like a pitcher, the way he throws the ball, but he can sling it around. Long strides. Has some strides similar to Nick Fitzgerald, but not as good a runner as Nick Fitzgerald. I see a lot of Fitzgerald similarities in how he runs the ball, but like I said, Fitzgerald was a much different runner. He was a much better runner. But this is a guy that's kind of deceptive in what he can do, run the football. I think a better runner than Michael Van Buren, at least in field vision and the ability to pull on a read, make the right decision. I think he's ahead of Van Buren there. Zachary Tucker's Kendrick Law from Alabama visiting state. I saw that earlier. I don't know if that's official or not. I haven't been on the board in a while. I haven't seen um, what's going on there. Robert Hill, why no pursuit of Ahmad Hardy at running back? Very high asking price from what I'm told. Much higher than the market for the running backs, and I don't know what he's going to do, but I think that could be hurting him a little bit. I like him a lot, but you can find a good running back for a good price. Remy Ballhard, what's your thoughts on Wayman Jordan, JUCO running back? I'm a firm believer you don't overpay at the running back position and believe we can find value by not breaking the bank. I like him. That's a guy that I think can help you. I would take him. I wouldn't break the bank on him. Same thing with Ahmad Hardy, but he is really blown up in the last few weeks. Ended up committing to UCF. That doesn't look like it's going to stick just based on him taking visits. I think State and Ole Miss are both heavily pursuing him. Um, I would take him in a heartbeat. Mason Welch got to meet Sam Purcell at the game Saturday. Went out of his way to speak to my 4-year-old. I can see why people want to play for him. Great guy, very personable, always recruiting, always selling. But that's who he is too. I mean, he's just a good guy. One thing about Purcell that I've been around him a lot so far in the last couple of years, 2 or 3 years, and he is just the same guy at all times. He's just a ball of energy, always positive. That's what he is. Whether he's on the phone with me, having a private conversation, or talking to a recruit, that's just what he is. And some people like it, some people don't. But I agree. I think he'll win here. Channing Sanders, how you doing, man? Good to see you. Former Winston Academy Patriot. Joshua Wright, who are the defensive tackle targets? Arkansas defensive tackle DeVier. They were recruiting him, and he's down, I think, to UCLA and A&M maybe is what I saw today. Nowhere, stays nowhere to be found. They didn't get a visit out of him. Mason Welch, what happened to David Turner? Did he just hit on talent? His fall should be studied. I don't know. This has been the strangest thing. I was really excited and was pushing the idea for David Turner to return to Mississippi State, and that is wow. Dante Dowdle's back in the portal. My goodness, State missed on him twice. We'll see if they'll get him this time around, or if he goes to Ole Miss or something. I don't know what'll happen there, but um, yeah, I mean, I was really excited about him coming back because his two tenures at Mississippi State were really good, and there was nothing that happened during those time periods that State fans could be down on. And he had, I think at Florida, maybe he had the defensive or position coach of the year or something like that. He's had a tremendous career. If you look at the resume, I mean, it's not just him, skating by or being given recruits. He's gone out and gotten really good players. He's developed really good players. He's developed players that were not considered good players into NFL talent. So he's done it in his career. I mean, this last run here has been the issue for David Turner. And I don't know if it's I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that it's this portal era. I haven't gotten the sense that he truly likes the NIL, the transfer portal. And if you're not all in on it, even if you don't like it, if you're not all in on it, you're going to get beat in recruiting. And he's going after a lot of guys that are kind of under the radar, potential guys, and those aren't the guys that are going to help Mississippi State in 1 year. So I don't know. It's been kind of rough to watch. Remy Ballhard, last from me, any information on the wide receiver Giovanni Gibson. Saw on social media he was scheduled to visit State. Like that kid a lot. I don't know. I don't know if I've missed when he'll visit or not, but yeah, he's a good one. And that's a different kind of wide receiver that they've been, the kind of guy that they've been looking for. He could help State. They have some irons in the fire with wide receiver. It feels like they're going to get a couple of good wide receivers. Row, what does it mean when we were atrocious on defense, but not one coach on defense lost their job? That is really a crazy thing to me. That and I'm not going to advocate for people to lose their job, but it's just following college sports. When you have a unit that's that bad, and Mississippi State was on the defensive side, you just don't see the entire staff retained. It just doesn't happen. So it's been kind of crazy to see. Robert Hill, Woody just declared for the draft. Yeah, but I think his eligibility was out, so that was formality anyways. Matthew just answered that a few minutes ago on Dontaria Russell. You can go back and watch. We're about to get off here, and if you missed anything, you can go back and listen. But yeah, we just talked about Dontaria a few minutes ago. Again, guys, would love for you to come check us out. This has been one of our biggest months of the year as far as subscriptions because of the transfer portal. And if you don't join it for Paul and I and our information, join it because of these fans that are on there that are constantly, like I said, updating the transfer portal, what's going on, even if it's not Mississippi State related. And the conversations are just insane that we're having in there. So come check us out. Give us a shot for a week, month, whatever you want to do. I promise you will not regret it. Again, if not for us to have conversations with other Mississippi State fans, because it is the fastest growing message board at Mississippi State, and to me, the most vibrant, the best message board out there. So come check it out. Adrian Brown, are there any cap limits placed on revenue that can be held by collective or NIL programs at schools? There is a cap limit at I forget exactly what it is, but I think it's just over 20 mil. So yeah, there is a cap limit on it. All right, well, we'll shut it off there. Thank you guys. Great hour of conversation. Again, if you want to go back and watch the rest of what you missed, this is going in the archives immediately. And you guys can go check it out. Great crowd tonight. Come back next week. Stay with me. We'll be talking more transfer portal next week. We will, even with the Christmas holidays, we'll try to get over here maybe Monday or Tuesday. We'll see what the schedule holds, but we'll get over here and talk. We'll talk basketball. Mississippi State basketball is about to ramp up big with SEC play. So come talk with me on that. Subscribe to this channel before you go. Like it. Come subscribe to Maroon and White Daily. Subscribe to Thunder and Lightning Podcast. Do it all. I would appreciate it. But other than that, Appreciate you guys. Hope you have a great week, and we'll catch you down the road.